What's wrong, MBT?
I don't know. It just feels like the fish have hit their limit. Sure, they can synchro summon, but they're never gonna top.
Don't worry, MBT. With the power of Runick, anything is possible.
You really think so, Joshua Schmidt?
I know so.
Hey, thanks. What do you say we throw this one together?
I can't do that, I'm just a JPEG. Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts! I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. The fish, the fish, the fish. Outside of Ghost Trick, I can't believe how inexorably I've tied my finances to this one mid-joke. GHOTI is the end stage in a chain of evolution that's been brewing since the Cretaceous, a series of fish that synchro summon. And in Phantom Nightmare, they got something that every TCG archetype desires, a good second wave of support. Presenting GHOTI Runick. So here's the list. This is Ethan Noble's top 8 list from the Sandy WCQ. As always, I'll give you background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is the #1 place to go if you need a pack simulator, a card database, or want to read a wealth of strategy articles. They also post breakdowns and lists from every major TCG and Master Duel tournament, including the Master Circuit series. Give them a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. So with that, let's get into GHOTI. If you're unfamiliar, GHOTI is a series of fish tunas that can special summon themselves from the cosmic unknown of banishment during the standby phase, then quick synchro on the opponent's turn. This allows you to ladder through powerful tribal monsters like Arianpas and Ascan, as well as actually good cards like Baron and Big Chungus. The problems with this archetype were twofold. Firstly, there aren't really any good non-tuners in the archetype. And secondly, each individual name is a hard once per turn, so there have to be enough names to quick synchro and make a chain that's like 4 or 5 summons long. But both of those problems were fixed with the support in Phantom Nightmare. Keef is a free non-tuner that also doubles as removal, and Psychicis is a level 6 monster that ensures you don't have to double up on terrible singletons like Snopoisis. By supplementing these 2 new cards with old favorites and Runick, you can ensure you draw enough cards to find a school of fish and summon enough non-tuners from the extra deck to make powerful synchro combos. This deck's already taking tops, and might just have what it takes to douse the Flames of Fire format. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Now, each hand that pops off is going to have to make use of both a tuna and a non-tuna. Tuner, sorry. The non-tuners are easier to talk about, so let's do that. The first suite of them is, of course, the Runick spells. Cards like Runick Smiting Storm, Dispelling, Destruction, Flashing Fire, Slumber, Tip, and Freezing Curses are, of course, interaction, but they're also a mechanism by which you can put a certain number of stars on the field, which you can then use to synchro summon. Gary is a very powerful card from preventing OTKs, but he's also 4, and paired alongside the level 2 tuners, is able to make Arianpas Serpent of the GHOTI. Hugin is level 2, and a mechanism by which you get Fountain. Usually she's only good for that, but she can also go into a Cupid Pitch. This is a 4-star synchro monster, and this card specifically, when summoned, allows you to add a level 8 or lower monster with 600 defense from your deck to your hand, including Hop Ear Squadron. And what do you know? That means that if you're able to find another Runick spell, you can convert that into a Gary, which can then become an Arianpas on its own. So there's a lot of fluid pieces of this. It's one big ocean of powerful monsters. In terms of other non-tuner monsters, we are of course playing Snopoisis. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone who has played the deck previously. A fantastic way to consistently recur advantage by way of its own recursion effect. Also a great way to ensure that you get multiple activations off of things like Schiff and Paces, but also a way to independently proc Zep Ruby of the GHOTI, which when banished is immediately special summoned, and then can perform a synchro summon afterwards using it as material. Snopoisis, however, is really bad in multiples, really bad to draw, and all around a really resource-intense card. While it's endlessly available due to the effect of Arianpas, it's not the whole game on its own. So we are also playing this card. This is Moonlight of the GHOTI. If this card is normal or special, you can add a fish from your deck to your hand except itself, then banish a fish from your hand or face of field. And if banished, you can banish a fish monster from your hand, graveyard, or face of field, except it to special summon this card. This is sort of like a Snopoisis that requires only one material, but it comes up in a lot of different situations to perform a different role. We are also playing 3 copies of Lifeless Leaf Fish. This card's incredibly powerful, allows you to, on normal summon or special summon, bin a fish from your deck to the graveyard. Usually we'll be sending Schiff because it can banish itself, but there are scenarios in which you want to send other things. Bea Tuneful Princess, which converts, of course, to any of these cards, and the newly released Keef, which, despite being two stars, is not a tuner monster. It's just a free special summon if a fish is on the field, and if a monster is special to your opponent's field, except during the damage step, you can target one of those monsters and one of your banished level 6 or lower fish monsters, banish both that opponent's monster and this card, and if you do, special summon your targeted monster. Then during the standby phase of the next turn after this card was banished, you can special summon this banished card. It's a fantastic card that allows you to, during the standby phase, summon non-tuner material for immediate use, even if your opponent has like removal spells that can prevent you from accessing your synchros in a meaningful way. We've of course got stellar cards from the previous iterations of GHOTI. Schiff, Paces, and Zep all have the same effect, which is they enable you to perform a synchro summon on your opponent's turn, provided they're on your side of the field. Zep is a little less flexible insofar as how it does it. Schiff can banish itself from the graveyard, which is super sick, and Paces can banish itself in order to get dead normals out of the hand, which is less likely than normal now that we're only playing 4 of them total, but also not a 0% chance. Outside of that, our non-engine is pretty tight, as you would expect. It is Runick. We have 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Though it is searchable, Hoppier Squadron is also kind of a hand trap. It's a fantastic way to convert some stuff on field your opponent might not be expecting into some really powerful monsters like Baron de Fleur. We've got a triple tactics talents, and we've got a Called by the Grave in the extra. We've, of course, got the 2 Gary and the 2 Hugin. We have access to 10s, so we're playing Chungus and Baron. GHOTI of the Deep Beyond is, of course, an incredibly powerful card, and you do summon it a great deal in this deck. You also summon White or a Whale a consistent amount of the time. This is the 8-star monster we are playing that is not Ozcan. On special summon, it destroys all your opponent's attack position monsters, which is really good against a significant amount of the field. Ozcan can engineer a banish, which can put your opponent, who's on Snake Eye usually, in a really weird position. Arion Pos is a combo starter, and Typhon and SP Little Knight are just incredible defensive cards. Frequently, you just end up on so many Runick spells that you need to cycle them by using Runick Fountain, and then you've just got material on your side of the field you can convert into something that actually matters insofar as Little Knight. In the side, we're playing Phantasme. I'm trying this out in a lot of decks right now. I think it's okay versus Snake Eyes. Obviously, it necessitates a second hand trap, and against Snake Eyes, probably a third hand trap. But the way decks are built nowadays, it's not really that unlikely that you'll be able to find it. I think it's okay in Runick specifically because in hands where you know you're going to have to Runick out your opponent, you can go really hard in on the Runick cards while insulating something like your Hugin from negation. But it also does a really good job of, in hands that absolutely need to find like a Nibiru or they die, getting you a little closer to that. We've got 3 Ghost Spell, we've got 3 Droll and Lockbird, we've got a Harpy's Feather Duster, another Triple Tack, Triple Cosmic Cyclone, and double evenly matched. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Kashtira Trap Tricks, and yeah, this deck is kind of going through an identity crisis right now. This is a weird take on the deck, but I think I would have preferred the one that's playing main deck Dimension Shifter. We're going second, and we're a Runick deck, so we're mostly going to sit on our hand. Our opponent's going to begin with the Pressure Planet, then they're going to go for Unicorn. Unicorn here is going to grab a copy of Theosis. They'll activate Theosis targeting the Unicorn in order to get them a Fenrir from deck. First, they're going to go into Boudica, into Sarah, grab the Field Spell, and then afterwards going to activate the effect of the Fenrir in order to grab from deck to hand a Rise Heart. That Rise Heart's coming to their side of the field. They're going to go ahead and overlay these 2 for a copy of Shangri-Ira, and then Rise Heart banish Birth. If this looks like a weird deviation from the combo, it's because they have a Scare Cache in hand. They're going to use the Pressure Planet to pop their own copy of Shangri-Ira, use the replacement effect to put a body in grave, and then use the Scare Cache in order to banish the Theosis to get Birth out of banish, special back this Unicorn, and end on Unicorn Fenrir. Or so they thought. Thankfully, we do have a way to negate this copy of Shangri-Ira before they get to the standby phase. We're first going to get rid of this Birth because otherwise it really cooks Runick alive. We're going to negate their monster's effect and then try to go off. We'll go Fountain. They're going to go Hole here. They'll activate the effect of this Sarah, and I kind of beef this one. I go tip for a Hugin to protect the Fountain from the incoming Mirmello. But what I don't recognize is Mirmello has to be Chainlink 1 because it's a mandatory effect, and we would have been able to resolve the effect of the Runick Fountain as Chainlink 2. Though we would have lost it, we could have maybe retained a tip, which maybe would have been something. Anyway, we're going to normal summon a copy of Bea Tuneful Princess after resolution of this chain to go into a copy of Lifeless Leaf Fish. This is going to send from deck to graveyard a very powerful fish monster, Schiff. Our opponent's going to be able to banish the Superstar Slayer Typhon from our extra deck, but that's not too big of a deal. We will once again protect our Runick Fountain by using our Smiting Storm to tag into a Hugin as the Pressure Planet targets it. Then we will shift to increase the attack of our Lifeless Leaf Fish. Next, we'll go for Keef. We'll take some more damage in the process, proceed to the battle phase. Of course, it's skipped because of runic reasons. And then in draw phase, we'll activate Freezing Curses in order to get rid of this Flare Metal Dragon before it accidentally kills us. We'll go for Fountain here to draw a couple of cards. Thank goodness we draw a couple of really live ones. In standby, we're going to go for Schiff. Our opponent's going to go for Unicorn, the effect of Shangri-Ira, and then the Pressure Planet to pop the Fountain in case we drew more runics. They'll go for a Merrymaker. That's going to prompt the Keef from us. We're going to tag out the Keef and in the Tuneful Princess, which can then tag into a copy of Lifeless Leaf Fish. This is going to send to graveyard a copy of Paces, and now we're really out to the races. We will use Shift to convert that into an Aeonpos. Aeonpos banish Zep effect in order to go into a White or a Whale. This will blow up all the attack position monsters. We'll also trigger the effect of the Aeonpos in sequence to get a copy of Snopoisis into rotation. Our opponent will normal summon a copy of Murmello in order to grab a Traptrix Traphole Nightmare, and we will activate the hand effect of Hopier Squadron to make a Chungus. Next, we'll activate the effect of the Snopoisis in order to trigger the Chungus and the Snopoisis in sequence and banish from our opponent's graveyard and their side of the field their two last threatening monsters. They'll go Sarah into Holatia here, triggering the effect of the Sarah, but guess what? We drew an Ash Blossom because we're crazy. They're going to go Orchard here and use the Orchard to convert the Sarah into a Murmello, which does trigger, and then afterwards going to overlay for a Pinglucia. This is just for a Zeus setup. We're going to let them take some damage in getting to it, and then in main phase 2, they're going to go for a Zeus. They'll activate the Zeus, we'll let it resolve, and then we'll activate the Snopoisis in order to get it back to hand. They'll set one and pass, we'll Nibiru at end of main, and the reason we are doing that is because despite the fact that it looks like we are at parity, we are not in the standby phase. They're going to be able to hold a Tia in order to bring back Sarah, but we're going to be able to bring back Paces and Schiff and Keef. It's all coming up, fish. We're going to go ahead and make a Cupid pitch. That's going to theoretically get us a copy of Hopier, but our opponent fires off this copy of Traptrix Traphole Nightmare here, triggering the Sarah. Of course, we've drawn the Ash for turn, so it doesn't matter, and now we can just kill them. We'll go Snopoisis, we'll activate its effect and get a copy of Ozcon. We'll trigger the effect of the Snopoisis and the Ozcon in sequence to get rid of this token, and then we can activate the Ozcon effect to summon it back to our side of the field, and that is lethal. Woof. So hopefully that last game dispelled any illusions you may have had from the card by card. If you're looking for a cheap competitive deck that is comprehensible, look elsewhere. It is a really complicated deck to play. One of the most complicated I have ever sat down with, and its interaction is unfortunately layered and targeted. When it goes up against a deck with similarly layered and targeted interaction, things get hairy. Our opponent for game 2 is on one such deck, Snake Eye Pure, one of the two Snake Eye variants that is running rampant in the TCG, and we are going first. Let's see what we can do. We're going to begin with a copy of Lifeless Leaf Fish to send a Shift to the graveyard. A lot of things start with this. We'll go for Shift here, and then we'll go for the Keef that we have hard drawn. We will go for this copy of Runic Tip in order to grab Fountain, and then we'll activate Fountain, followed up with a Freezing Curses to summon a Gary from our extra, draw a couple of cards, and walk headfirst into a Ghost Bell. Oh no! Okay, well, at minimum, we can go SP Little Knight and pass turn here. Our opponent's going to draw for turn. It's a Nibiru. In standby, we get back the Schiff. Our opponent's going to begin with a copy of Divine Temple, sending a Flamberge. Next, they're going to normal summon a copy of Ash and grab a Popular from deck. Poplar is going to activate. It will summon to their side of the field and activate on field in order to grab the original Sinful Spoils. We'll go Schiff here to grab a copy of Aeonpos. They will trigger the effect of the Divine Temple, and we will trigger the effect of the Aeonpos for a Zep. We'll go for Zep here. Zep is going to convert into an 8, so we'll just go ahead and make Ozcon. Ozcon here is going to banish this copy of Flamberge, which is just great, and we'll trigger the effect of the Aeonpos as well because we already have the Snopoisis. We can get... They're going to go for the Nibiru here as we reborn the Ozcon, but we are just going to Little Knight out. They're going to go for the Sinful Spoil Snake Eye here for a Snake Eye Oak, and we can Snopoisis here to continue extending. They're going to summon out this Poplar, and we're going to go for Snopoisis in order to prevent the Snake Eye Oak from being able to go to the graveyard. After that, we can trigger the effect of the Piscis in order to get and banish a copy of Paces and just end on some really powerful interaction, cutting them off from the access to Oak. They're going to go Promethean Princess, and they're going for the Raging Phoenix line, but unfortunately they are one monster short here, and as a result, they're just going to be able to clean house rather than OTK. Rough. Okay, we should be able to clean up from this position. We've got the Snopoisis online, and as we start activating standby phase effects, they decide, it's not worth being here. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent is on, what else? Snake Eye Fire King. So this is kind of an interesting open for our opponent because it's not particularly powerful. You want to have access to Kieran, of course, but you don't want to see two of them in this configuration, and they don't really have a starter. So despite the fact that we only have an Ash Blossom and a Nibiru, this might be enough. We're going to go for a Dispelling, and then we'll set one and pass. Not a really powerful open, but it leads into a lot. But it's going to begin with a copy of Kieran. They're then going to normal summon an Oak. This is technically full combo, but thankfully we do have access to Ash, so we don't have to worry about it. Afterwards, we're going to go for a Hop Ear Squadron into an Aeonpos, but the thing about Snake Eye is you really can't count them out. They're going to go for an infinite impermanence, and we're going to draw for turn. That's a pretty good one. We're going to normal summon this copy of Paces by tribute summoning it. We'll activate the effect in order to add and then banish a Paces, and unfortunately walk into a Droll Lockbird. We're instead just going to get a Gary to our side of the field and then break the battle phase lock so that we'll have a 4-star on our side of the field when this Paces returns. Our opponent draws probably the best card in their deck. They're going to go for the Diabellstar here, but we can cut them off of it. We're going to go Paces into an Arion Pass as they set a copy of the original Sinful Spoils. We'll go Arion Pass to banish a copy of Zep, then we'll activate the Zep. That Zep's going to come to our side of the field, then we'll activate Zep in order to synchro summon an Oscon. We're going to Oscon targeting the Paces and then activate the effect of the Arion Pass in graveyard to get us Snopoisis to our hand. Let's banish that original Sinful Spoils and trigger the effect of the Paces to summon it to our side of the field, triggering its effect to get a Shift, which we will then banish. Our opponent goes for a Wanted and finds a Nibiru! They'll activate the Nibiru because we've summoned 5 times and then walk over the token. This looks pretty good for them, but of course in standby phase all the fish are coming back, so you know. We're going to bring back Paces and then afterwards we're going to bring back Shift, and we have the Snopoisis in hand already, so we'll just go for that. We're going to banish 2 cards to get it to our side of the field and then use its on-field effect. We'll summon the Oscon from the banished because it was banished for the Snopoisis and then go into a Baron de Fleur. That's going to pop this copy of Nibiru, and then we'll make a white Aura Whale just for damage, I suppose. We'll go Shift as well so that we can convert that into a 10 on our opponent's turn, and then we will get in for all but lethal, drawing them to a singular card facing down a Baron, negate any Nibiru. It's an Ash. We will activate Paces. We will activate Shift. They will scoop them up. So it's time for game 2, and yeah, I mean, this is a hand that the deck can produce. Snake Eye is adept at playing through 1-hand traps. Occasionally it can play through 2 with ease, and we're playing a deck that just doesn't have as much room for them as other strategies. They have kind of a mid-open. Some sort of negation on this Ash would be really powerful, but we just don't have it. So as a result, they get to go Ash and a Populous and a Link Rebo and a Populous effect, and then afterwards, of course, they can activate the Ash in order to grab a copy of Oak from deck. Oak is going to activate its effect to reborn this copy of Popular, and then afterwards, they can activate the effect of the Oak, sending the Popular for a copy of Flamberge. From here, they can activate OSS, sending the Flamberge for a Ponix, and then chain blocks the Flamberge, and the Ponix is going to grab a Circle. This is kind of cute because it means that they're always going to have material to go into a Promethean Princess. They'll activate it in order to bring back Flamberge and set that IP Masquerena in the back row before making an Ambro Whale and setting Fire King Island. They're going to FKI pop an Arvada here, which is so frustrating. That means they get to bring back the Ponix now, but importantly it means when this Garunix sends a copy of Kieran to the graveyard, the Kieran will trigger and end on a negate for them. So this is rough. And of course there are 2 hand traps that are lurking we have no understanding of. So our hand isn't fantastic. We can theoretically play all of it, but we need our opponent to kind of misapply their points of interaction. We'll begin with the Runic Fountain, and they do the absolute correct thing, going immediately into Little Knight in order to banish it. We'll go Paces to tag out, they'll Arvada, and we'll just go next. So it's time for that all-important game 3, and yeah, I mean, this is just how it goes. This hand is quite strong, but it has a critical weakness to exactly infinite impermanence. A Veiler or something would have potentially got us into a position where we could win the game, because we have, of course, a Slumber we can activate turn 1, but even then we have to play through an Ash. Something like a Bell would cook us as well. These Snake Eye decks are just so dense with hand traps that you can't guarantee you get into a position where a deck that has to open a 2-card combo can do so, no matter how many copies of each individual card you're playing. We're going to use Slumber here in order to force our opponent into a weird popping decision, but it doesn't really do too much. They're going to go Hunter Fiend in order to recycle their extremely powerful OSS. They're going to go Ash into Poplar into grab the original Sinful Spoils back for next turn. They'll make Link Rebo into Poplar in the back row. Next, they're going to activate Ash. We can call by the Ash, which is a really sick hit, but unfortunately just having monsters on their side of the field is probably sufficient. This SP Little Knight is going to contest our last back row. We're going to go ahead and trade for the Garunix, but they've put us on 1 card, threatening full combo next turn with a crossout set. Nothing's going to do it. Certainly not Snopoisis. So we're back with the deck, and wow, we got seared. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, the Runic engine is a perfect fit. It helps GHOTI get to non-tuner 4s, so it can make Arion Pass, which is of course full combo, but it also provides interrupts and draws if you've already got access to it. 2, Snopiosis' effect can stop the original Sinful Spoils or any of the Snake Eyes from resolving by forcing them to banish instead. And 3, the deck having access to multiple board wipes from its combo and then being able to recover from them afterwards allows it to grind out games effectively instead of maneuvering through decks that go +5 turn after turn. And the cons. 1, seeing only one side of the engine is not likely, but it does happen. If it does, it means you often end on absolutely nothing. If you draw Runix and Leaffish, if Leaffish gets interrupted, you're just kind of playing with whatever Runic spells you have left. 2, hands have super variable strength. You can either play through 2 hand traps or 0. And 3, the deck struggles to play into established board states. Having no 1-card combo that clears boards on your turn means you can often end up using the Runic cards to set up your plays, and then pass to turn 3 just to make anything GHOTI happen. Overall, the deck has potential. But as a mediocre Runick variant, it seems like bait to pick for this format. You'll be reeling at your choice of deck if you play this into 8 Snake Eyes players at a regional. So that's that. Thanks so much for watching. These videos are basically subsidized by, and occasionally suggested by, my Patreons. If that's something that's interesting to you, please check out the link in the description. For now, I'd like to shout out my high-tier patrons, including Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Brett Henry, Canner, Seaweed, Darkmaster Zork, Derp and Dragon, Devin Senpai, DJ Elephant, Enraged Peacock, Gravity, Half Miss, John Piet, Juan Cruz Avila Zati, Night Mary, Legal Rights, Luis Hernandez, Matthew M. Derezzo, MBT Play Madolce, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Puffin of Doom, Rabout, Rose Lapine, Solar Flare the Ricka Queen, Troy Says By Erasure is Gay, Vincent Storm, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, Your Pot of Greed Does What, and Yuki. I couldn't have done it without you. Fucking planes, man. Why do we have to live so close to that decrepit relic, Reagan?